Oh, welcome back.
Hello.
Hello. All right, let me get into the. I got to get into the season's greetings, I guess I could say. Let me jump right into the introduction because I'll forget to do it because it's been so long and I missed you. So welcome to Brave Space Live, where we have tough conversations around anti-oppression and communal healing. I am one of your co-hosts, Tyshell. I am a DEI practitioner, diversity, equity, and inclusion, always adding in accessibility as well. And I most recently became a psychological safety trainer and coach. So that's a little something new. And here's my co-host. I did it right. Look, there you go.
There I am. Hello, my name is Melody Stanford Martin. I am an author and a social ethicist. I do not have as many credentials, I think, as Tyshell.
Listen, whatever the jobs will pay for, I do. But we can get into that kind of advice. So we wanted to start off talking about our topic for today, legislating liberation. And I think this is a topic that everybody has been talking about because every 5 seconds, a new bill comes out that's trying to destroy I don't know if I want to say it's destroying America because maybe it's exactly what America's supposed to be doing or what the system is upgrading itself. But these bills that are against all of our liberation as the citizens of this country. But before we get into that, I wanted to just we want to do a segment called Shooting the Shit, where we just kind of catch up what's been going on for the past couple of weeks. So I'll toss it to you, Mel. What have you been up to since the end of season 2?
I have been running amok in the woods in Maine, where I live, mostly. There's a lot of bugs right now, but it's very beautiful. I just planted a huge vegetable garden, so I've been out there every day. I even have like one of those fancy like hats that have the mosquito net.
You're serious.
Yeah, and the neighbor kid like wheeled her little bike through past my house the other day. She goes, "Why are you wearing that weird hat?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm old now. That's like what."
When kids go, "Why are you doing that, Miss Lady?" or something, and you're like,
exactly. Yeah, but it's a lot of fun. I'm very into plants, which I feel like as a 38-year-old, I'm like a millennial. I'm like, this is like my moment. I've reached my zenith.
I will say I'm fully into my auntie era, as they call it. Without kids yet, and I have my niece and my nephew, and my niece called me a rich auntie, and I was like, no, that's just because I don't have children and all I have is a dog to spend money on, so I can give you money when you need it, that kind of thing. But I'll accept my rich auntie era or whatever that is. I say that to people like I am doing TikTok, but the version of TikTok that gives you recipes and and social justice and home decor.
There you go.
I'm like, carts full of different items to buy to improve. I just bought 2 mosquito like electric contraptions and whatnot so that I could not have as many.
Let me know if they work because I probably need it.
You probably bugs here. I will definitely let you know. And I literally purchased this from Amazon at 3:00 this morning, and I was like, sounds good, add to cart, just buy. So that's how I am doing. But I would say too, I'm on the West Coast, and today we've had a perfect weather day. Where I live, the pool open, so I'm a girl who's gonna use the amenities. If there's a barbecue, I'm going to it. If there's a gym, I'm in there. If there's a pool, catch me in the pool. Like, I am that girl. And I actually, the apartment complex that I live in was doing a giveaway, and I won. And so I won a Yeti trunk cooler.
Whoa, that's nice.
Yeah, apparently they'll keep your stuff. Yeah, for 3 days, and it was full of stuff. So, I don't know. They had like a Yeti thing like this that you put your drinks in. Frisbee.
I thought you meant it was like full of like old food or like I don't know. or like body parts. I don't know.
Yeah,
Did
it was
you like?
like dragging it down to the beach to toss it in there. No, 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 no. It was full of all these goodies and I
That's
won and I was like,
amazing.
all right,
Heck
that's the second
yeah.
thing I've won. The first one was a dog basket and my building tries to do but I whenever they post that they're going to do something, I'm there, especially if it's free.
Nice. I love
You
free stuff. I do. Yeah.
exactly.
You know, earlier we were talking about like the dual income, no kids. There's an acronym for that. Did you know DINKWAD?
I never heard dinkwad, but I have heard dinks double income no kids and
Oh, WAD is with a dog.
oh, so
Yeah. We're both dinkwads.
oh my
That's
I
ridiculous. I
did
know it sounds
not
really
know with the
dirty.
dog. It
So
does. It
dual
sounds
income, no kids with a dog is a dinkwad.
wow.
So
I definitely did not know that. So, noob status post going up. But
yes.
the other thing I was saying is I've added psychological safety trainer and coach. I did a certification program, and I've actually built the training in a workshop on psychological safety. That's an immersive workshop. So that has been over the past like 6 months to a year, I guess,
Oh,
has been
nice.
really really fun to do, and I put people in scenarios, c-suite leaders, and I'm like, you're going to be in this scenario and you have to answer these questions, and that's it's been pretty enlightening. I've had over 1100 people go through that workshop.
Wow.
So
Wow,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
incredible.
But yeah, and I love it because we're really looking at how psychological safety can live it at work, but also really looking at it for life. So
That's
that's
awesome. Good for you.
thanks. That's
That's
what I've been
quite
up
an
to.
accomplishment. You know what my accomplishment has been recently? A wild turkey died on our property and I had to remove it.
Where do you live
I live
that
in
there
the
are
woods.
just wild turkeys?
We we normally have a flock and they're gone and I don't know what happened to them. So I had to call the game warden today, being like, "Listen, I think there's something wrong with our wild turkey." It's not funny. It's actually really sad.
It is sad, but you just said words that I didn't even, or things that I didn't even know exist. A game warden?
A game warden. Yeah, there's a game warden in like rural states, and you there. It's probably one in every state, but you just don't. We're familiar with our game warden because like we had a porcupine living under our stairs, and it was huge, and we thought it might be sick, so we had to call the game warden and ask him what to do about it.
These are things that I have never even thought about. What do you do when a wild turkey is on your property? Oh, you call the game warden.
Only if they're dead.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Or
okay.
they're acting weird. Or
Okay.
like if a bat has rabies or they protect the game and the wildlife.
Oh, okay.
Maine only has 1.4 million people in the entire state, so, like, it's, like, very rural, and, I never thought I would live here. I'm a California girl. I never thought I would migrate this far east, but, here I am, and it's actually pretty great, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's an interesting because you are from the West Coast and now you live at the very far East Coast, and I'm from the East Coast and I'm living at the very far West Coast,
That's
but
true.
which is
Why did we do that? That's weird.
well, I'm hoping to get back to the East Coast at some point because I don't know if West Coast life is for me. Like I'm just not sure about the West Coast. It's very different than the East Coast.
It's a
So
different vibe. It is.
yeah, yeah,
When I mean, from California, I don't know if it's how it is up there where you are because 'cause you're in the Northwest.
yeah.
But in California, it was very, like people will be very warm to you on the surface, but actually don't, like, show up. It's really weird. Like,
Mm.
if you see someone you haven't seen in a while, they'll be like, "Oh, we should hang out sometime." But it's never like, "When can we make plans?" It's like, "Oh, I'm gonna express interest in spending quality time with you, but I'm never gonna follow up on it." And it was, like, soul crushing for me.
Well, I would say what I feel like I experience the most is like everybody already has an established group of people that they know. And this is I had never been one of those people who's like, it's hard to make friends in your 30s. But like I'm experiencing that now because I feel like everybody has their group of friends. And
Yeah.
I don't want to go do a bunch of like I'm not going to a bar or like I don't want to go do those things that where people meet people, I guess. So I
What do
don't want to
you
meet people. I just
you
want
wanna
the
meet
people
people, but
here.
you don't wanna go to places where people meet people?
Exactly.
What are you doing?
I don't know. I'm gonna be in the house. Why, man? I don't know. I don't know. So
I feel you though. It's
it's
hard. It's hard to make new friends in your 30s. It really is. Like I don't know
and
why.
I'm very temporary with it. I'm like not trying to stay here, so I don't want to like be like, you're my bestest friend and let's move away from you. But whatever. So we'll see. I've gone on a couple. You told me to sign up for Bumble BFF, and I did. And I've gone on a couple. It's online dating, but in a very like,
But for friends.
yeah, but for friends, and it's very different. But I've gone on a couple, and texting with a few people and trying new things. And I went to coffee that turned into lunch with a lady, and hopefully, I'm like,
Hopefully you're friends.
it feels like dating. So you're like, hopefully we'll see each other again.
It's weird. Or like
So weird.
the moment you're like, I think you're cool. Can I have your number?
Yeah.
Platonically, like it is weird, but I've made a couple like really solid friends through the app, so I hope you have good luck with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Friendship. Well, I'm grateful for you, even though we've never met in person, which is still funny.
Which is, I know one of our producers said that. It's like, you still haven't met in person. I was like, yeah, it's been what, 3.5 years now, and
Yeah.
we haven't.
I don't
And
know.
it feels strange.
We'll figure it out one of these days. Maybe we'll meet in the
Exactly.
middle, which is probably like somewhere in like God knows where, Kentucky. So we're
No.
not going there.
No,
so
we got to go somewhere where we can do some
maybe?
stuff. Maybe Chicago.
Oh, that's in the middle,
a
right?
thing. Yeah, somewhere like that.
That'd be
But
fun.
all right, so let's get into our topic, which is not as fun as shooting the shit, but these are things that we think that you should be abreast of, you should know a little bit about, and we want to share and talk about how they've impacted us, made us feel, what we're thinking about, and how they are legislating away our liberation. So,
Yeah.
Mel, I know you want to talk about some of these bills, and you've chosen some to illuminate to our audience, listeners. Share with us.
Yeah, so let's just frame it in the larger context for a minute. And actually, I mean, you said earlier you're not sure if this is ruining the country. I firmly believe that these bills are actually ruining our country and eroding democracy. And we're going to get into it. That sounds really hyperbolic, and I wouldn't say that lightly. But just to give you a sense of the scale of what's been happening with these bills, the ACLU has been tracking 491 anti-LGBTQ bills across the country. I think the count is up to 44 states have had these bills introduced and many passed. And like half of them are specifically geared against trans people. We're talking, this is not just like a weird instance here and there in like deep red states. This is probably, if you're listening to this, wherever you are in the country, there are bills, if not multiple bills, being passed in your state houses that are literally stripping people of their basic human rights and dignity and freedoms. There's been a 28% rise in book banning this year alone. There have been dozens and dozens and dozens of bills being passed throughout so many states trying to get people to not talk about woke things, whatever, however you want to define that. But I know it's infamously difficult to define, apparently. But like banning diversity training, banning discussions about racism or sexism, even banning, and this this stuff gets downright creepy, even banning like negative discussions about US history. So like banning teachers from being able to tell the truth about US history and what actually happened. So we're actually waging a war on knowledge and truth in a really creepy, terrifying way. So if you're not abreast of this stuff, you're not familiar with it, we just want to raise awareness about these bills and that this stuff can be happening in your own backyard, right? And a lot of us think, oh, the federal elections are the only ones that matter. But these state bills matter too, because state bills can have a huge impact and make people feel, in some cases, literally unsafe to live in their state. So that's the big picture. So we want to get into some of these specific bills and break them down as examples of what's been happening so that you are aware. And here's the other kind of creepy, weird, nefarious part of this is that a lot of these bills introduced state to state, they're like written exactly the same way, which means somebody, probably conservative think tanks and legal defense funds, are writing these bills with like donor money and then feeding them to state legislators, which is not how it's supposed to work. Like our state representatives are supposed to be writing bills, right? They're supposed to be like doing their homework, doing their research, listening to their constituents with people who live in their state and finding out what their local people want and writing the bills and passing them. They're not supposed to be getting bills already written, handed to them from big, powerful, creepy, secretive think tanks. So
which is why when we say things like 60% of the country is 61% of the country is pro some version of abortion for in women's rights. But how is it that there are bills that are banning abortion before 6 weeks? We're disregarding a rape or incest, all of these different things, but 61% of the country is for it. So that means that there are different states that are for it and their constituents are for it, but their legislative body is getting a bill from this conservative think tank that's which is why I mean, and we'll probably talk about this, but like why I think that money has to be out of politics and it's that shouldn't be driving our politics because
big time.
Then it goes and then also we'll be talking a little bit about trigger laws as well. So I wanted to get into maybe one of the bills that you had seen that has been affecting LGBTQ or I'm so tired of the term woke. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I know. We could have a whole episode on just talking about the word woke and like, what do we do with that? And like, if we're not going to use that word, what do we call ourselves now? Like what? So the other thing is like, it's important to know too that a lot of these state legislatures don't really represent the people. Right. That there have been some really concerted efforts in marketing to leftists and liberal young people that their votes don't matter and that state elections don't matter, so that they ignore those elections, like us young people, who are conscious, socially conscious. Mm-hmm, and then what happens is we end up with what's called a super majority of conservatives in these. Is this?
Yeah, I think your mic is rubbing a little bit.
Oh no! Okay,
we don't want the sound for the listeners to be.
Hold on a minute. I think I'm using the wrong mic.
No. It's just that your mic is rubbing. Oh yeah. Oh, you might be on the other mic.
That's gotta sound. Hello. Check.
Go ahead.
1.
Yeah. Okay. I can hear you now.
Sorry, it was like using the wrong microphone. Sorry, everybody, for the noise there. So
what you're saying, us our liberal a lot of how we've been thinking. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like if people who are socially conscious and liberal don't show up to vote in state elections, and there's also a lot of voter suppression, which is a whole other episode itself, but we get super majorities in state legislatures that are very conservative and don't actually tend to represent the will of the people. You can see this in the Tennessee 3 who just got expelled from the Tennessee state legislature. Okay, so we could talk about politics. I could talk about politics for a long time, but I'll shut up for a moment. And we will switch gears to talking about these specific bills to give you examples of what these bills are. And special thanks to our producer, Lish, for getting this list together because it's really helpful. So let's first talk about Tennessee House Bill 878, which is apparently, supposedly, a conscience-based objection to marriage. So it's on the surface, it sounds like very Jiminy Cricket, like always let your conscience be your guide. And
you're also now showing your age to these people because they're like Jiminy Cricket.
Jiminy, we're not with your age. Or listen. Oh my God, my dog is farting so bad. Oh my God, it smells so bad. I'm so sorry. That was so woof, woof. What did you eat, child? Oh my God. Okay.
This is the best beginning to season 3 I can think of because she's like, whoa.
Are you happy that my dog farted?
I'm not, but this is just so hilarious. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
The conscience bill.
Based objection to marriage. So on the surface, it sounds like, oh, you have to follow your conscience. But here's what it is. It granted the people signing marriage licenses the individual right to solemnize, to like authenticate a marriage and sign a marriage license. Basically, if the individual that person has a conscious, religious or conscience-based objection to a partnership. So if Joanne in Tennessee, who works at the State House, doesn't agree with interracial marriage, interreligious marriage, gay marriage, she doesn't have to sign that marriage certificate. Those people might not get to be married because Joanne decides that it's against her religion to sign marriage licenses for like a Christian and a Jewish person to get married, or a Black person and a white person to get married. I mean, gay marriage is like,
we'd be out of here. Me and my husband will be out of here
You
already. And it starts with LGBTQ,
it's
right? And
yep.
this is why we tell people, and this is something that I always say when I'm doing DEI work, is that so I do this thing called the snow day scenario. So I'll do a workshop, and even in my psychological safety workshop, I do something called the snow day scenario. So I'll kind of frame it up for you. The snow day scenario is based on, so if you have children in your home and you've ever looked out the window and you see, and you or the you have children in your home and the school calls a snow day, like they're going to be closed for a snow day, and you look out your window and there's like, I don't see any snow on the ground. Why is there no snow? And you think to yourself, this is ridiculous, they're just doing this. What I try to let people know is that just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening, right? And
Right.
also, when we and I used to work at a school, so I know this to be true. When we call a snow day, we're calling it for the people who live the farthest from the school that the school um offers, education to. So the kids who live the farthest can also have that equal engagement in their education. The people who live the farthest need to be able to get to school, right? So I always tell people,
Yeah.
just because you see it doesn't mean it's not happening to somebody. And we all know with weather patterns, just because it's not happening to you right now doesn't mean it won't happen to you soon.
And you would
I
want the
always tell
same consideration.
Right. So I always tell people, like I live on the West Coast, so I always tell my friends who live like Colorado and even PA, hey, it was the weather was really terrible here today. It's coming your way.
Yeah.
And that's how we have to think about these bills. So they're starting with LGBTQIA plus communities, but it's a very particularly vulnerable group,
Yeah.
right? That people have some sort of or some thought process of objection to,
Yep.
right? Because of their moral, because of their religious, because of their uh, they're scared or they don't know, or their willful or unwillful ignorance that they have, and that makes us all vulnerable,
Right.
right? Because we have to think about what happens for disabled people. When we say to
Yeah.
people, and I always tell people that we don't actually have marriage equality because disabled people don't have marriage equality,
Disabled people do not. They lose their disability benefits if they get
right,
married. Yeah, it's
right.
really unjust.
So we have to really think about this. So when you talk about this bill, and remind me the name of it,
It's
Tennessee
HB 878.
HB 878, I would not be able to get married. Both me and my husband are different races and different religions, right? An interfaith marriage. So when we think about what these bills mean, and just because this person decides that they don't want to do it, they have some objection to it. And lastly, I'll say, or go ahead, Mel. I want to say
Well,
one other thing about this bill.
yeah, so I mean, so those freedoms of conscience already exist for clergy in all states. Like if a Jewish clergy person doesn't feel comfortable marrying a Christian couple, they don't have the rabbi does not have to marry a
Mhm.
Christian couple if they're not comfortable. That already exists. That's already codified in the law. Religious freedom. You cannot force a clergy person to officiate a wedding with something they don't agree with. What this does, it extends that same idea of religious freedom to civil servants, and it says the functions of government can be dependent, the access to government and the rights of access to government and governmental services can be dependent on someone's individual religious conscience. So this opens a huge can of worms for just societal chaos. Like, let's say, I mean, and I always like to use these bills in the inverse. Let's say Joanne was a Satanist and didn't want to marry anyone but Satanists, and she could legally say, I'm not signing your Christian to Christian marriage. Like, that's against my religion. Like, this is what I
Exactly.
mean. This is how ridiculous it is. The functions of government. So what we're seeing is a larger pattern. This is, I hope, one of the biggest things people take away from this conversation, a larger pattern of extreme religious folks, almost all conservative Christians, and I can say this as a former Pentecostal pastor's kid, conservative Christians breaking down the separation of church and state and going to war against secularism. Secularism. They, by and large, want a theocracy. They want religious rule. They want to be able to use the force of government to force people to comply with their religious morals and values and teachings and beliefs. And this is not an, and the founding fathers were not perfect, and I will not stand up for them because they did so many terrible human atrocities based because they were slave owners and things like that, enslavers, excuse me. But the founding fathers never envisioned for our country
Right.
to be a place where people could
enforce their religious beliefs on others. And actually, they were very adamant that this country should not be founded on religion so that we could avoid the, quote, ceaseless and bloody wars of Europe, because many of our founders were religious refugees who had been persecuted for their beliefs because the state and religion were too intertwined. So it is so important that we protect secularism and protect religious freedom within that.
So one of the things I wanted to say in your and the thing you said about clergy people not marrying people, that stands, and I get that, right? I'm in an interfaith marriage, and when we went to a synagogue to find a rabbi to marry us, they said we only do weddings where both people are Jewish. But they also gave us a list of people that we could interview that do interfaith weddings, and we found the right person for us, and that we weren't against it. We still go, we have gone there for high holidays, and I am not Jewish, so that's okay. We're not telling you have to marry people, which is why, like in Denver, you can just marry each other without an officiant, which I love. But and then so one of the other things that really makes me think of this bill specifically is the longest running racial law is the law of miscegenation, starting in 1664, ending in 1964. A lot of people know that with the case of Richard and Mildred Loving v. Virginia.
Can you explain what that word means, miscegenation?
Miscegenation, it's not being able to marry someone. Often it's because they're the racially intermarry, and it's usually because that person is Black, right? And the reason, so I'm going to explain a little bit about what miscegenation is and how it worked. And this is when we talk about, I know people get tired of hearing or maybe not understanding how patriarchy and racism are these different branches of this big colonial tree. Tree of colonialism, I guess we could call it. Instead of the tree of life, it's the tree of colonialism, where women were property. And until like the late 50s, early 60s, I think, women couldn't even get a credit card without their husband's approval.
The 70s. Yeah. Also, I found out recently in the state of Maine, women were forced to wear skirts in the state house until 1993. So this is like within our lifetime, some of this stuff. Anyway, continues. No. Miscegenation, mixing of blood, right? So isn't it like a fear of like interracial couples having progeny that were not like quote unquote pure? Or
part of. But so how the law worked was that if you are a woman and you had your father, you say you only have 2 sisters, and your mother and father you're the oldest, and they're gonna split whatever money, property, all of these things between the 2 of you. You are a woman, so then when you get married to a man, because this is a heteronormative way of thinking in life, right? Your property belongs to your husband now. So you and your sister have 20 acres of land apiece and some livestock and whatever, but now it becomes your husband's. To stop, and this didn't happen actually with Black women and white men, because we can see that through enslavement, a lot of Black women would have children by white men. I say to have children, and I also mean they were sexually assaulted and forced. But to stop Black men and Black people from becoming landowners, they stopped white women from marrying Black men. This is also So this is also where we see the term white show up. White was not a term. It was European. It was Irish. It was all of these different places, wherever you came from. However, they needed a unifying term to call these group of people after Bacon's Rebellion. So they called them white. So white landowners could not marry enslaved people, African people, even freed African people. So it's the longest running law, racial law. And I say that about miscegenation because when you say, oh, I don't believe that 2 LGBTQ people should marry, that goes right into that same law. People of interfaith should marry. People of interracial relationships should marry. All of those things go into that same kind of law that we're still seeing. So I would say Loving v. Virginia ended it, but did it really? If it can come back around.
It can come back around in these weird loopholes of like, oh, but it's individual conscience, and this is really interesting too, because and everything you said makes total sense. Of course, it goes back to capitalism and property. Of course it does. Like, obvious. Of course. Like, why am I surprised? I'm still surprised, but why am I surprised? So it's really interesting too to see, because I lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee 3 years ago. And when I lived there, my sister was getting married and she wanted me to officiate her wedding. And I have a master's of divinity, right? I studied theology for 10 years. So of all the people she knew, she was like, I want you to do my wedding. I was so honored. We went to get my wedding license in Tennessee, and they had just passed a law in Tennessee that only ordained clergy and like approved like denominations could perform weddings. So 3 years ago, this is already the precursor to this bill, HB 78, had already started in Tennessee. So I was denied a marriage license unless I got ordained by like I couldn't do it online. It had to be an official in-person ordination process. So I can't remember the name of this. It was like the American Marriage Foundation or something like that. This nonprofit rented out a hotel room in Chattanooga, and they've spread the word. They're like, we're ordaining people to get marriage so they could officiate weddings for one day only. So I had to go to a hotel and get ordained by some random people I'd never met in order to perform my sister's wedding, even though I'm highly credentialed and more than capable of performing. It's absolutely ridiculous. So again, this is like trying to wrest control from like who gets to, so again, it comes down to who gets to define what marriage is according to their supposed religious tradition, because obviously Christians invented marriage, even though marriage predates Christianity by thousands of years. Christians don't own marriage. They never should have owned marriage. It was never a thing that Christians invented, or it's not a appropriation for other people of other faiths or no faith to get married. Christians do not get to own these things. So it goes back to this like larger question of who gets to decide and who gets to be in control of other people's freedoms, which is really, really serious when you get down to the kernel of what is happening here.
It's one that really, really gets me. I want to say shout out to our listener Josh, who said, I'll only say your first name. We said, what do we say instead of woke? He said intellectually liberated, which I kind of like the ring to that. I will say woke also kind of has its roots in hip hop culture, in that like one of the first people to really incorporate it into music was Erykah Badu, and they showed her a video of Ron DeSantis talking about woke, and she was like, I think they mean black. Yep, I think they mean black. And I was like, exactly, Erykah Badu, because what is, to be woke is to be awake, to be able to pay attention. But that's the words get co-opted, but they do that on purpose. This is not a thing that they're doing by accident. They co-opt the words so that they can obscure the meaning of it, and now write a bill called woke when it started from like a 90s late 80s, early 90s hip hop song. Like, it's ridiculous. Yeah. What's the next bill you'd like to discuss, or if you'd like to round out this one?
Let me just say one more thing on, to add on to what you said. I think if you replace racist with anti-blackness, I think, and anti-woke with anti-black, it all makes sense. Like all the pieces fall into place. The anti-blackness in our society, and the sorts of things that Black folks and Black activists have been pushing for, and activists of color, to raise societal awareness and societal consciousness. There's this is all a backlash against that. It's all a backlash. All right. So the next bill is from Texas. It's House Bill 7398. By the way, listen, there are like literally like hundreds and hundreds of these bills. We're completely cherry picking randomly, trying to get bills from different areas around the country. But House Bill 4378 is known as the Drag Queen Bounty Hunting Bill.
Yikes! That already sounds sinister.
It sounds like a free episode of Breaking Bad or something. This is the quote unquote Drag Queen Bounty Hunting Bill. Okay, what it is? It's a proposed law which would allow anyone in Texas. So it's proposed. It hasn't been passed. It would allow anyone in Texas to sue people who perform in drag or host a public drag performance where children are present. The bill targets events like family-friendly brunch shows at restaurants or drag queen story time events at libraries. The people who sue a person or venue can be awarded $5,000 in damages. Well, that's a great way to make some extra money, right? You find a drag queen, you report them, you get $5,000. The bill defines drag as a performance in which the performer exhibits a gender that is different than the performer's gender recorded at birth. It goes on to say these performances can involve using makeup and clothes to dance, lip sync, or to perform in a lascivious manner. This is problematic for so many reasons, not only because drag performers are small business owners, so you're really taking income away from small business owners, and you're eroding freedom of speech and freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. This is the other really dangerous thing for trans folks. if someone is trans and doesn't quote pass, which is a really problematic term, but doesn't like appear on the surface to be a cisgender person, they could be accused of being in drag and they could be criminalized for just
Right.
being a trans person. And there have been similar bills proposed in other states as well. Criminalizing drag performances is an attack not only on the LGBTQ community, many of whom do drag performances, but it's specifically a really dangerous affront to trans people who are already extremely vulnerable to harassment and violence and other kinds of insecurities like housing insecurity, employment insecurity, bathroom insecurity. So these drag queen bills really piss me off. Like really bad.
One of the things and they get me as well, and one of the things I implore people to do is think about not what the bill is like actual what the words in the actual bill is. Think about the loosest group of people that this could apply to,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll see how, because when we talk about this bill and when we talk about bills, and this is why we have a Supreme Court, which is they're a whole different story and how they're made up, but we have, because it's open to interpretation, right? So what if I think that you singing walking down the street as a trans person is performing? What if I or what if I think that you are a woman who's dressed like a man in pants and you are singing opera? What if,
Yeah.
like, what, and we have to play these what ifs, because that's who that's who can be targeted and who is the most vulnerable in these bills. And they really get me in that when we think about what's happening to children, and these bills are not to protect these children, because children are not have not been affected in a negative manner from having drag queens around them, having trans people around them, having men dressed in pants around them. Again, when you talk about where this bill can slide right into, you think theocracy, right? What
Yeah.
about women outlawed from wearing pants because
Yeah.
you're dressing in a manner that does not that is not from your recorded birth, which somebody chose, right? Like that. So it's so it's written for people's interpretation. And then also one of the things that even that they somehow state in the name of the bill is bounty hunting. People are
Yeah.
giving people the right to now point at people, be vigilante in what they see as vigilante and make money. Also, the same fruit of colonialism is this capitalistic arm, and that, oh, I'm poor, because when we talk about these bills, we're talking about very vulnerable groups, but we're also talking about, we have a lot of poor white people in the country. I'm poor and I need to put food on the table, and poor black people as well, and poor, all different groups. Need to put food on the table. I'm going to say that person, that trans person, who I actually may not even have anything against, is doing something lascivious because I need $5,000. So
And
now
it's yeah.
we're
It's so
making it
arbitrary what's considered lascivious,
exactly
is like, and listen, I'm all about protecting kids from sexually inappropriate content. But that's not what this is about. That's not what this is doing. And I want to read a quote from a transgender rights activist and independent reporter named Erin Reed, who said, these bounties can easily be turned against trans performers. It could ban a trans person singing karaoke, or just like a masculine looking woman or a feminine looking man from just singing karaoke. Like, how sad of a society do we have to get to where we're making people afraid to sing and perform in public? We're literally like sucking the joy out of our own people. And Erin said specifically, this could also ban pride parades, because
right.
there's a lot of dragon pride. So, this is an affront to freedom of speech, our most basic human expressions of joy in the world. So,
Right.
yeah,
That cuts out that whole pursuit of happiness.
yeah,
Thought process. The other thing I wanted to say, that our producer reminded me, who helped us put this episode together, Lish. What about intersex folks? Right? Because
yeah,
when we start talking about biology or the sex that a person is assigned at birth, we forget about folks who are intersex. Now, are they a large portion of our population by percentage? No, but they still exist, and we have to
Right.
really think about what that means for folks. Because what if you're not a trans woman and you're an intersex person
Right.
who presents this way, or have decided to follow the gender that feels most natural to you, but you have ovaries and gametes and all of these things that biologists know, but these people creating legislation do not.
Yeah.
And they're saying, oh, this person is singing, I think they're trans, but they're actually intersex. And like, when we say this, like, I want people to also understand that you can get when you get arrested, it's a very traumatic experience. It's not about being prosecuted and thrown in jail. Being arrested is also very, very damaging. And I say that because when you get arrested, you could spend weeks, months, years without having a trial. They will move it up because to them it's work, to you it's your life. And if you don't have money to post bail, you could be sitting in jail until they call your court date. So it's not as if, and then who wants to be in jail at all? Right? So when we're thinking
Why
about
are we
this,
criminalizing people for
exactly.
this? Why? Why are
Exactly.
we criminalizing people for this? It's why do you care what is in people's pants? First of all, like, mind your own business. Like, if you have actual evidence that children are being literally harmed, then let's see it. But as far as I'm aware, the kids that are being harmed by like priests and youth pastors. Honestly, like, that's where most of these cases are coming from. There really isn't a lot of evidence at all that trans people or drag queens are harming children. So you find the evidence, I'll listen to it, but it's not there, I can tell you.
And I will say that too, because I won't name the place that I worked at, but I worked at a couple religious institutions, colleges, higher education, and I was there when the archdiocese letter came out that the president, a priest of the school, had to address, talk about, and then we had to rename more than one building, because if they weren't named in the sexual assault of minors, they were named in covering it up.
It's
So, and
just
that's not to say that all Catholic or all this or all that or
right.
all any group,
Yeah.
but I lived through that. I've seen it. We had
Right.
to rename buildings, and we had to contend with the archdiocese letter coming out. So when we talk about, if we're talking about really caring for kids, and the other thing that really scuffs my Tims, as I heard online recently, the other thing that really scuffs my Tims is that if we care about kids, where's the universal pre-K? Where's the lunch for kids in school, and not making children pay because they're poor for school? Where's that for
where's
kids?
child care tax credits? Yeah, all
Exactly.
of it. Yeah. To wrap up this section talking about the drag queen bills, I want to remind everyone that Ronald Reagan, the patron saint of conservatives, himself performed drag for a movie called This Is the Army in when was it? The 1940s, 1943. And the movie This Is the Army was created specifically to raise funds for the war effort to defeat Hitler. So Ronald Reagan, you can see clips of this online, did not just one, but I believe multiple drag performances in this movie, This Is the Army. So Ronald Reagan doing drag to raise money for the army to defeat Hitler. So drag is an American institution, everyone. So just calm down. Let people be who they are. If there's evidence that actual harm is being done, let's see it. But until then, you have to let people express themselves and enjoy their art form and enjoy their lives. Like, just leave people alone. That's what I have to say about it.
Let's talk about one or two more bills I know we're already getting close to the hour, which we always get here and go, how do we get here so fast?
I
Because
know.
at this conversation, and I wanted to talk about some travel advisories to a couple of states, but I'd love to hear, I think it's necessary to hear about another bill or two.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another one. Texas House Bill 2889, the quote, heterosexual tax cut. A newly introduced bill in Texas proposed property tax cuts for couples who get married, stay married, and have lots of children. I'm sorry, this is kind of funny, but it's also not funny. There's a catch. In order to qualify for the tax benefit, couples need to be heterosexual, never divorced, well, I'm out, and their children have to be born or adopted after their date of marriage. So they would get 40% property tax reduction if they have 4 kids. And tax breaks increasing for every additional child. A couple with 10 kids or more would pay no property tax at all.
I think this leaks into like replacement theory. I think this also leaks into isn't there a new documentary on some streaming service about like the religion that the Duggars came from?
Oh yeah, the Quiverful thing. Yeah,
it's like
this whole idea you need to have lots of kids and shoot them into the world like arrows for Christ. Yeah, it's
and it's really interesting because when we were all 19, 17, 16, 17, 18, 19 kids and counting, we were all like, this show is so interesting, and not knowing that they were like giving us this like super Christian papa. I mean, you should know his name is Jim Bob, but like this super Christian propaganda and understanding like this whole and the be fruitful and multiply is also part of this like replacement theory and wanting to have more children. Now, the thing that I think this does is, and that why it could get people, is because I need tax breaks if I have children, and they would help me. So but then you lean into all these other things.
We love the children, but we want to financially incentivize people to have more children just so they can get tax breaks on their property. So, but we love the children. Let's just
also like there's not a tax break in the world that's going to make up for the lack of universal pre-K that you don't and won't get. Kids cost so much money, and yes, it's great to have a tax break, but am I going to have 10 kids?
That's
what am I feeding these kids? I'm feeding these kids from a pig trough.
And it's also expensive to have children, right? Like to give birth and all the things. I mean, I don't know why this is even necessary, but apparently, according to Representative Brian Slanton, he said, supporting Texas means supporting Texas families. Texas will be start saying to couples, get married, stay married, and be fruitful and multiply. I am not surprised that this is coming out of Texas because there's so much anti-immigration sentiment in Texas, right? From like Central and South America. Replacement theory for sure. But like, I mean, I was raised in a community that was like 40% Hispanic, mostly Mexican, some indigenous Hispanic folks in my community. And there was quite a bit of racial tension of like the white folks like not wanting to be the minority because white people have not treated people well as other minorities, right? So now white people don't want to be the minority because they know how minorities get treated apparently. So So yeah, this seems like a last ditch effort from like a dying institution of white majority to say, we're going to just get all the white people to have more babies and then we'll solve all our problems. I don't know. It's just
so another angle that this makes me think about is it's very anti-women, right? Because if you have 10 kids, can you be at work when you have 10 children? Very likely no. It would make more sense for you to be at home, barefoot and pregnant, relying on a husband. And I also think that this goes into millennial women and under have taken to having less kids because they want to pursue higher education.
There's a lot of reasons, but that's one of them.
Right. It's a big, not all, but yes, it's a big one in there in that they have kids. We have kids later. We have less kids. So it's an anti-woman bill because now if you're having 10 kids, you're likely going to be out of the workforce because you're going to spend 10 years pregnant.
Yeah.
10.
I mean, if you want to do that, that's fine. Right. It's your body, your choice, right? If that's your dream in life to have 10 kids, then do it. But I agree with you. And not only that, but like creating pressure to have more children. Oh shoot, I had such a good thought and I forgot what it was.
The other thing I wanted to say too is that I'm all for whatever is right for you and right for a family to do. I think that that's great. But when we think about what this can do to women and setting people back, if people start demanding that that's what women have to do,
right,
and then or you get pregnant and you can't have an abortion, so you have kids. And also, the thing that I think people forget about childbirth is that it is one of the things that people say women is the closest women can come to death. It is a lot of work on a woman's body
Yeah.
to have and or miscarry and or be a part of any of this part of bringing life to the world. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And that all more of that work goes on to the woman physically,
Yeah.
because she has to bear these children. Or are we going to have now multiple wives and you got multiple kids and y'all
Yeah.
all live under the same? But isn't that like illegal? Isn't that what
I don't
happened
know.
on like?
If this bill was just trying to purely incentivize people to have children and they didn't say you had to be straight couples, for example, I wouldn't have as much of an issue with it. If this bill came with like economic incentives to help people afford that many children, right? Like actually trying to fix the cost of living issues or the wealth gap in this country, I don't know, maybe I'd be a little bit more sympathetic, but this just seems like such an obvious
because if that was the case, imagine like if there were, and I've heard of this happening with more single parents, they all move into like a how like a couple of people move in and become like platonic life partners and raise their children together, but you have to be heterosexual, which is not for this bill. So that's not gonna work.
You also can't be a blended family. Like they have to have the kids after they get married, and they have to stay married. It's so radically specific that you're like, okay, there is definitely an agenda happening here.
So not 2.5 kids in a picket fence, 9.5 kids in a picket fence.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, I think one more thing, it also doesn't address the issue that I think a lot of women our age are not choosing to have kids because of climate stuff. I know a lot of people who've decided not to have children because of climate change and not wanting to bring their kids into the mess that we have in our planet and not being certain of our future. So I think like addressing this issue of like hopelessness and not wanting to have children, like it ain't because of property taxes. There's other reasons happening here. And this is just a very like tone deaf approach. All right, next bill, Missouri House Bill 1606, quote unquote, sleeping while homeless. What it is now a misdemeanor for anyone to sleep or camp on state-owned lands in Missouri without authentication. House Bill 1606, aimed at homeless people, does allow one warning with no citation. The new law, which is being targeted by lawsuits, of course, because it seems super, super unjust, allows municipalities to allocate up to 25% of the state public safety funds they receive toward the creation of homeless outreach teams. So it basically criminalizes and puts a target on homeless people's backs just for being homeless. And I think another similar bill was passed in Tennessee, I believe, that literally just outlawed people to camp publicly, right? So like, they make it sound like people are just like, oh, I think it would be fun to pitch a tent in the middle of downtown Nashville and camp outside. People don't do that, right? But they use the term camping, but what they really mean is homelessness. And so, yeah, literally just homelessness is already criminalized in so many places, right? People can get arrested and taken in for just loitering.
We already have things that go against that anyway. So like there's like a lot of in urban places, they will do, I forget what it's called when they do construction. They make construction so that it's not conducive to homeless people sleeping on that bench. That's why the bench is not there with an extra armrest in the middle so you're comfortable. It's so that a homeless person can't sleep on that bench.
Yep.
Right. But we're talking about these. So and I have a long history of understanding these services because my mom worked in a shelter system for people who were facing or had drug abuse issues or drug use issues. My grandmother also worked in a men's shelter. My mom's worked in a halfway house. And it's not as if people choose to be on the street without having gone through these systems. But you have to have, one of the things that I learned, and I actually interned in my grad internship at a safe haven for women. Anybody who identifies as women. I had trans clients, I had older clients, I had young clients. And we got in contact with them through bouts of street homelessness. And we actually had a safe haven because people couldn't even make it in the shelter system because even that can be a rough situation. But criminalizing people for not being able to afford homes is absolutely wild to me because that's another stitch on capitalism that like you can lose your job. A lot of people who, lose their job and can end up homeless through a series of bad events. yes, through mental health issues, but also one of the things that we talked about a lot in my program is that, and I worked in a program that was housing first, so you could still be a person who used substances, but you still deserve a home. So it's a housing first system in Philadelphia, because there are lots of people who are functionally doing drugs and they have homes. They might have money. You can watch the Wolf of Wall Street or any other movie where people are making millions of dollars and doing coke in a bathroom. Like that's not.
If you're white and rich, it's tee hilarious. If you're poor and a person of color, you're going to jail, and that's not justice. It's not justice. Right. Yeah.
So it's to criminalize not being able to have a home. And then also one of the things, and this is kind of off topic but on topic to bills like this, is that we've now glamorized living in your car anyway. It was like something that people who, I wouldn't say houseless, people who were without homes or houseless people had, and now hashtag van life, because millennials know that we can't hold down a mortgage, so we're living in our car or our van, and it's a glamorized homelessness, right? So we have to understand that when we take these if we are not providing services, we're telling people that you don't deserve to. Where are people going to go if we criminalize it? Where?
Right.
Like that's the thing I don't understand when you criminalize homelessness. Where are people going?
Exactly. It's very like, let them eat cake. Like, I don't care if I ultimately, I'm not going to say the quiet part out loud that I don't want homeless people to exist because it inconveniences me, because I don't want to see them. So I'm just going to make their life so utterly difficult that they have no choice but to just not exist. And I'm not going to face the music that means I'm threatening their survival. I'm not going to own up to that. I'm not going to take responsibility for that. I'm just going to say, oh, we need to clean up the streets, get those people out of here.
Right.
Or,
and then we also, so two things that this also makes me think of is, because what do we do when we criminalize homelessness? We are driving people towards our prison industrial complex.
Yes, we are.
And most of our prisons have some sort of incentive for money. So now your tax dollars are paying for that person to not receive services and possibly get better, but to be in a prison that you still have to pay for. Yeah. So when we think about it in that way, and then having this understanding of that, so I was listening, I was coming from getting coffee the other day, and this woman was talking about her great nephew and how he bought a house, but there's issues because they have these tiny houses for homeless populations near where her nephew lives, and they don't have they have one central bathroom and a tiny roomed house where they can lock it up and go, which is an amazing amazing thing that people are doing. But because it was maybe not, it was close, just within a couple hundred yards of her great nephew's home, she was like, oh, and it's not beautiful. The houses look nice, but I don't want homeless people. And I'm like, if you give them a place to live, and they want to lock up their own stuff, why would they come rob you and then go back in the house that they live? It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. There's a term for this. So we learned the term dinkwad today. NIMBYs are people who say not in my backyard. So they might talk big game about being social justice advocates and wanting equality and wanting programs, but they're like, oh, but just keep it over there so they don't impact my property values or my schools, or so NIMBY, maybe let's not be NIMBYs. Maybe we can be neighborly and care about each other's well-being.
And as our producer has just recently said to us, we also have to understand that when people who are homeless or houseless go into the prison system, they become then the 13th Amendment of slavery, the abolishment of slavery, is not in effect, where that prison labor can happen, and it's labor for pennies. And then we also now give those people who enter this system, this prison industrial complex, we label them criminals, and now their worthiness goes down whether they are in or out of prison, because you have committed a crime and you deserve to be there. When we also must remember that 95% of the people in our American prison system are there for non-violent offenses.
Is it that high? Oh my goodness.
Only 5% of the people in prison are there for violent offenses.
That's wild. Wow. That's
We have
wild.
to really understand that. We could probably keep
We
talking
could do a
about
whole
these bills.
episode. Yeah. Okay. So let me kind of rapid fire through some final ones as we're nearing time. So in Arkansas, Senate Bill 81 um, calls for local oversight of materials available at public and school libraries and materials to be banned. So it opens the door
The
to
books.
it opens the door to criminal liability for the distribution of obscene content by the school and public libraries. So you're saying people locally, especially like groups like Mothers for Liberty or whatever they're called,
Moms
like
for Liberty. Yep.
Moms for Liberty, they have this like rabid conservative mother groups that go and like literally bully teachers and try to get them dismissed from their school systems for
Which is
teaching.
it's like a delineation of Daughters of the Confederacy.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know, but that would make sense to me.
No, it
So
is.
it is. Oh,
is.
it literally is. Oh, yeah.
It is.
So in states like Arkansas and states like Florida, like teachers not only have to, I mean, I was watching on social media, teachers in the state of Florida having to index all of their books and lock them up and not let the children even touch the books in their own classroom or let the kids read the books or teach from the books until all of the books were indexed and approved by a governing body who are not educational experts. They're just like concerned citizens who think that, I think in one case, like a biography of Rosa Parks was banned.
Mm-hmm.
That was completely innocuous. Just the biography of Rosa Parks. So just they didn't want that taught. So banning books by and for LGBTQ kids to make them feel safe and seen and supported and represented, banning any book that's deemed woke or racially controversial, quote unquote. We're not just talking about banning books that are like sexually inappropriate for that age group. We're talking about banning any book that any conservative community parents who are not educational experts decide that they should have full control over what their children access. And as somebody who comes out of fundamentalism, and granted, my parents were not like this, and I want to say thank you to them for encouraging me to pursue public education and education in general. Like they were very conservative, but also like they were very on board with me opening my mind and like learning about different things. And I really, really appreciated that. They might regret it now. I don't know. But I think this goes back to a lot, again, and I'm not trying to pick on Christians, but I do mean that like almost all of this political activity and these bills that are being banned are being supported by right-wing conservative Christian groups. I'm not exaggerating to say like that's who this is coming from. This is the right-wing Christian bloc.
I also wanted to say too, we have to really look at that from a racial lens as well, because they're trying to ban our history of other people so
Right.
that you can control the narrative of how the story is told, which is a slide right into to fascism.
Exactly. And when I say conservative Christians, there are conservative Christians of color, but it's very white dominated space. Very white dominated space, conservative Christianity, as far as like what's considered civil and pure and appropriate and moral, white heteronormative. So these book bans are to me very interesting, but because coming out of a community or a world where it was very much focused on sheltering children from other points of view, because it is true that when you experience other points of view and you humanize people and you learn to empathize with people who are different from you kind of learn that maybe your super strict claim on black and white truth or absolute truth starts to become a little bit fuzzy. You can't
gray.
If you meet, if like growing up, I didn't have any exposure to gay people whatsoever. I literally thought gay people could not experience the love of God. Like I thought they were like reprobate, whatever. I mean, as a gay bisexual person myself, I say this, like, I believe that gay people like could not be saved, could not be holy, any of that. And then I went to seminary and I met a gay woman minister who was ordained at the seminary, and she was incredible and she was loving and she loved Jesus. And it broke my brain because I didn't understand how this could be, because I just hadn't been exposed to people in the world like that. So conservative Christians are very threatened by people who are different because it really messes with their structures of belief, and they want
control.
And they want nothing more than basically wrap their kids in bubble wrap. So this book banning stuff is very much motivated by a religious desire to not just protect kids, but to shelter kids in the most negative way possible from seeing other points of view. And I think that's extremely intellectually dangerous.
And I have to say too, for me, my story with understanding books was I I went to Temple University. I grew up in Philadelphia, and I went to Temple University, and I did a lot of classes in African American studies because I wasn't getting that in school. In high school, the history classes that we took were world history and American history. There was no Black history. So when I went to college, I wanted to learn more about my own experience, because when you are in high school, elementary school, middle school, a lot of what you learn is that Blackness starts at slavery. And that
Yeah.
just something about that did not seem right. Like, I know about Mesopotamia, but I didn't know about, the different countries and understanding countries in Africa. I was one of those people who thought Africa was a country and not a continent that had 54 countries that had, like, if you there was there we're social media folks, so we're always on social media. They go around asking college students. I saw a TikTok, and there was a series of this. Can you name 4 countries in Africa? And college students could not name 4 countries in Africa.
Oh my God. That's
Right?
awful.
Right.
Yeah.
So to me, I took a lot of African American studies classes, and I learned so much. It really helped shape how I see the world, how I understand the world, what I was facing at times. And it's also, one of the things I remember reading was the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, where he says his greatest gift and his biggest curse was learning how to read, because now he knew his plight and he could no longer ignore it. And for me, that's why I became part of DEI. But really understanding what that looks like. And when we talk about legislating liberation, it really hits home, because I didn't learn about Blackness and all of the things that come along with all of the how we become here. It's like when we think about, so even now, so this last thing, even when we think about who gets to call themselves American, everybody except for white people have a hyphen. So even Black Americans, my family has been here since the 1800s. So if I'm not an American, but I don't even feel comfortable calling myself an American. Everybody else is like, where are you from? Where are you really from? Because it only belongs to one group. I really had to dig to find out more about Black people prior to civil rights, because even when you learn about Black history in school, you learn it post-slavery, not prior to who you were before. So I think
it really centers Black suffering and Black exploitation, right? Instead of saying, like, Black folks.
They didn't enslave. They did not. African people weren't slaves. They were Africans who were enslaved.
Exactly.
And that's where I learned that.
Yeah, exactly. So along those lines, and this is some of the most threatening information that a lot of these state legislatures do not want people to know. So coast to coast, and this is from a Forbes article that we should post because it's a really good breakdown. Coast to coast, they're calling them anti-CRT bills, which we know, those of us who actually study this stuff, CRT is taught in like law schools and like
only
graduate schools.
It's
not taught in kindergarten. It's not. It's just that's a very silly thing.
But we know that
the idea
his name is decided to obscure that terminology. I don't even want to say his name. I can't remember it, but I can't.
But the idea of just teaching a lens of understanding systemic racism is like horrifically scary to these people for some godforsaken reason. So coast to coast anti-CRT bills, specifically banning things like the 1619 Project, literally banning knowledge of the true story of American enslavement, which is still important history to know, in addition to the other history of folks of color. In Iowa, trying to ban criticism of the Pledge of Allegiance, trying to make it illegal to criticize the Pledge of Allegiance. In Kentucky, trying to ban any negative claim about American history. Can you imagine? Can you imagine trying to teach a history class, but you're not allowed to say anything bad about America? Like, what? We've done so many terrible things. Like, you'd have to cut 70% of I'm not saying 70% of American history is bad, but there's been a lot of bad stuff. There's been a lot. So just to not be able to talk about it, like, how are we supposed to even educate children in these states?
The truth, with the truth.
And you know what? It's really interesting. And I think Kentucky's one of these states, someone correct me if I'm wrong. In a lot of these states where these bills are being passed, teachers are fleeing because they don't want to be criminalized for teaching history. They're leaving the country. And in some of these states, there's like thousands of open teacher shortages. And
they had but school bus drivers who are essential. We need them teaching special ed
Oh
classes and
God.
teaching classes
Oh God.
because of the teacher shortages.
And some of these school districts have gone down to a 4-day school work week instead of 5 days. So they can't even, not only are they not educating the children, but they're like regressing in their education system is crumbling because they're criminalizing teachers for teaching normal things that children should learn.
Right.
And I don't use the term normal, I try not to use that word, but it should be normal. This stuff should be normal.
I mean,
It should
when
be
I was in
ubiquitous.
high school, a full 17-year-old, and my teacher was 22, and that was bad. She was 22. I
That's
remember
so
being
young.
about 15, 16 when 9/11 happened, and my teacher was bald in the corner crying. Now, it was a tragic event, but she was our teacher, but she was so young. So we're going to like teachers who are young and to people who are not qualified to be teachers. They have they have paraprofessionals, which we need teaching full on classes. So and parents are often going to school, dropping their kid off, thinking that they have a full work day, has full school day, and then they don't. Because teachers just can't. It's a burnout. It's burnout.
It's terrible. It's terrible. I mean, our education system's already chronically underfunded. I mean, this is a mess. This is an absolute mess. This is not helping us whatsoever. This is not helping. This is making me very afraid for the next generation who grows up just ignorant AF, right? New Hampshire wants to put these education reform ideas into the budget. They're trying to ban teachers from teaching certain ideas that that could lead to groups like Mom for Liberty offering a bounty for any. So we talk about drag queen bounties. There's now teacher bounties going into effect, and I think this might already be happening in Florida, where they're reporting teachers and even getting like financial reward for reporting teachers who are or getting the teacher's license revoked. And now HB 1255 is trying to amend the 70-year-old teacher loyalty requirement and making it required for teachers to denounce Marxism and socialism and forbid teachers to present any negative portrayals of the founding fathers.
So you want to know what's really interesting about this bill? It's not just about, so part of the reason that this bill comes up, and I heard about this, especially in Florida, is that one of the people that works under Ron DeSantis is a proponent of charter schools and making money off of charter schools. So if you're trying to whatever public school system and have people go towards school choice to charter schools, then people like Betsy DeVos and this other person whose name I can't remember under DeSantis, who works with DeSantis, are making money off of it.
Yes. Devaluing public education, making it crappy, making people want to leave. And then, oh no, there happens to be a charter school with open arms where someone, because they're for-profit organizations, someone who runs that charter school, like I think the DeVos family might own charter schools or something like that.
Of them. Oh yeah.
They're just waiting with open arms because that mean, ugly public education system is letting you down. But we defunded it. Like what? This is a freaking Ponzi scheme. Like our public education is one of the most important institutions in our society, and societies that don't have strong public education do not survive. Like we're talking about catastrophic damage to our society, to our government, to our future, Americans already read at an average of a 6th grade reading education. Like we cannot afford to take more hits to our education system.
Right.
And I'll say another thing, going back to like the LGBTQ again, in Maine recently, my home state, I found out that someone was trying to propose a bill that would require teachers to use the pronouns the parents prefer for the child. So the children can't even determine like what they want to be called without parental permission, which could literally put children in danger if they're in an abusive household, or in danger of self-harm if that child's dealing with like intense gender dysphoria. So these are coming from a really ignorant place. And that's another word I don't use lightly. The word ignorance, I think, is a very strong accusation, but we have got to do better for our society. We have got to protect our freedoms and our liberties. And that's why we named this episode Legislating Against Liberation, because if you are living in a controlled state, an authoritarian state where you strip people of their basic rights and freedoms, people are not going to abide by that for very long. Like we cannot, that's not a sustainable way to run a society. And I
then
don't think
America
people, I
falls
don't think
apart.
people are, I don't think people, they're passing these bills are thinking ahead to the ramifications of who is unsafe, who is further marginalized, the damages, the psychological damages, emotional damages, the monetary damages of
Right.
having education systems fall apart, things like that. I mean, it's monumentally foolish. It's
I
monumentally
want
foolish.
to I want to go back to something I said in the beginning, and I said I don't know if this is breaking America, and what I meant by that was that I think that this is some of what, now I don't know that I would say that the founding fathers designed it this way, but this is going back to, I think, when the, so I was listening to a podcast, another podcast recently. I'm an avid podcast listener. When we talk about the system breaking down, when we talk about systems like this breaking down, really it's finding a way for it to re-up. So every time there is backlash from liberals, from minorities, or what have you, we course correct a little bit, right? Things seem to get better, right? But it's 2 steps forward and 10 steps back. And that 10 steps back is like, think about Terminator. Once he gets shot, he's like, oh, I'm shot and I'm down for a minute. And then he rebuilds himself
Yeah.
to now be able to sustain that. So sometimes I think that this work that we are doing and understanding that this legislation against liberation is coming because we had things like a black president, because we had things like a Black Lives Matter, because we had things like, making our systems better in certain ways. So I really think sometimes the system is actually working as it's designed to now patch around that the whole of Derek Chauvin we just passed the anniversary of the passing of George Floyd, to go around that, right? Like George, I think Derek Chauvin being arrested and convicted was the system getting rid of a bug, and now it can rebuild around it. So when I say that, like, do I
Oof.
think that,
Oh God, that's
right?
dire.
And that's
I'm
the
not
thing
saying
that,
you're wrong. I'm saying like, holy
right.
crap.
And that's the thing I
Ugh.
think we need to think about when we're saying, when we talk about liberation, is that if we're not working to liberate together, this is why I tell straight people, when I tell white people, and I'm saying that in opposite of any minority or group of people, marginalized group, is that we're not working together for our liberation. They're coming for you too. And I say that also to white men as well, not saying like, oh, because white men feel like they're the most targeted. Even you won't be the 1%. Most of us will not ever get there. And here's the thing: the highest rates of suicide, of death by suicide, are among white men. Because if we're not in this together, poor white folks, poor black folks, immigrant folks, they're coming for us. It's going to happen to us too. So I think when we think about our liberation, it is not, you're not doing this for gay people. You're not doing this for black people. You're not doing this for immigrants. You're doing this for yourself, because if we don't have any immigrants in our country, the food you may be getting from a grocery store, you may not be able to get. The liberties that you have to get married right now may be taken away, right? The food you can put on the table, you may be criminalized for it. And then when you become homeless, and then you become a prisoner of that, we have to really think about all of these things as really, really interwoven and interlinked. And our liberation is tied specifically to each other, and you cannot have one without the other. Like we have to all be working together. So when I'm thinking about liberation, I'm not just thinking about what it could do for myself, but I'm thinking about what it could do for the person that I stand to be able to marginalize the easiest, which is why I always tell people to start there. When they think about, oh, I want to be an ally. Well, what group do you belong to, and who are the most vulnerable among that group? For me, that's Black trans women. For me, that's immigrant women. How can I work to make sure that I am lifting up, following, not just lifting up, not just lending my voice, but also following in the legislation of those of folks that don't look like me, that don't experience life with the privileges that I even have, even though I have marginalization as well. So I didn't want to end on that sort of soapbox, but really, it really makes me think some of this. And one of the last things I wanted to say on this specific topic is understanding right now, the HRC and the NAACP have put travel advisories out for going to places like Florida.
Wow.
Like we think we do that to other countries. Oh, don't travel to this country because it's war torn. There are travel advisories for Americans
Yeah, let
going
that
to
sink
American
in.
states.
Let that sink in. Holy Moses. Yeah. And
So,
you know, it's just what it and for these states, like it's gonna cause it already is causing brain drain of like talented, educated people wanting to leave because they don't want to leave in a place where people are having their freedoms taken away. DeSantis
mhm,
has already made Disney World angry. I don't know if they're going to leave, but like they've already like pulled a lot of investment funding into state, and so they have all these
right.
people move there thinking of Disney World is going to invest like $5 billion in the state. They pulled the. It's just this does not make economic sense. It doesn't make political sense. So why is it happening? And I think it goes back to these like really entrenched religious beliefs. But I want to say this to your point too. It's like, yes, I think it is important to realize that your liberties are not secure. They have to be fought for. They have to be codified, no matter who you are, right? These arbitrary categories of race are only meaningful because they have historical significance, not
Right.
because they actually mean anything.
Right.
But also, I think it is really important to remember that you can stand squarely in the center of privilege as, like, for example, an upper class white man with blue eyes and blonde hair, and still understand that you want to live in a place where people are treated fairly and equally, and you can exercise empathy, even if it has nothing, even if it doesn't impact your life directly, as in like you have to be afraid for yourself. Maybe you can't imagine that, but you can imagine that the people around you are your neighbors who are
Mhm.
real human beings and you want them to be safe and cared for. That is basic human connection. And if you can't get there, then I want to encourage you to rethink your worldview has been seriously negatively impacted by capitalism and by white patriarchy supremacy. Like, seriously, it has stripped you of your ability to empathize with your fellow human beings. It is cutting you off from connecting with other people, and that is dangerous for your own soul and psyche. It is so.
And so I also, so I do want to talk about the heart and mind and your soul and psyche, but it's actually literally dangerous for your life, right? Because when they if they criminalize LGBTQ people, doesn't affect you. They criminalize black people. You're white, doesn't affect you. They criminalize disabled. Oh, you're able bodied, could become disabled at any point, but you don't know, right?
True.
All of these things.
You could become homeless, you could become disabled, you could become
Right.
criminalized.
And then when they start
Yeah,
criminalizing the poor,
yeah.
then
You could become poor.
what is like the what do they
Yeah,
call it, like the when this came, I didn't jump on the whatever, I didn't when this came up, and then they came for me and there was nobody to speak for me.
yeah.
One of the things I want to say too, as we switch into just some a little bit of a lighter topic, some things top of mind
This
for
isn't a
us.
light topic. This is
No, and I got agita and high blood pressure.
okay. We'll take a
There
breather.
there is a Dr. Robert G. Kelly, who was just recently on the Amanda Seals Small Doses podcast, said um the long people say that the arc of life bends toward justice. It doesn't actually bend that way unless we bend it. We have to
Mm,
do something. Often we think that we sit back and it'll fix itself, because we always think there are people that are smarter than us. Somebody will fix it. Somebody will do it. But
yeah,
we have to be in that, and we have to bend it instead of it bend. It doesn't bend without us bending it. So I wanted
yeah.
to say that as well before we go on to top of mind.
Justice is not magic. Justice
No,
is not magic. It comes when people vote and people act and people raise their voices, and we get representatives into these positions of power who actually represent the people and
right.
actually represent the will of the people. And we get money, like you said, money out of politics. Like, we have so much work to
You gotta
do to
stand up.
repair the sins of our ancestors in this way. Like, we
Yeah.
have inherited a system that's not working for human flourishing. And so, politics, I used to think it was just for grown-ups and not for me.
And
Even
then you're
it's
grown
like,
up.
no, I'm saying like a few years ago, I used to be like, oh no, that's for the adults in the room. Like, it doesn't impact me. It doesn't. But like I live here. This is, and I want to be proud of where I live. I want to be proud of my country, and I can't be right now, and that sucks. It really sucks. Like,
And we
I
have to
I
say it.
mourn that.
We have to say that you said this season 1 and season 2, I think, um is that we didn't you may we may not have created this house, but this
Mm,
is the house that we inherited, if any of us get to inherit a house,
yeah,
because of the economy. But we inherited this house, so it is our duty to fix it up while we do it.
yeah,
And I mean, that's the work of being part of it. So, voting, and not just voting, but standing up even around the times of voting as well, because gerrymandering and voter suppression is also a thing. So pay attention. In essence, be woke. No. Or as Joshua said,
intellectually liberated.
Intellectually liberated. No, you wouldn't say woke up. You would just say you're woke. Stay woke.
That's a very nerdy thing to add.
Yeah.
Yes, we can talk about lighter subject. Let's get back to shooting the shit a little bit. Or we decided our last segment's going to be top of mind. So what's been top of mind for you lately? Let's cool it down a little bit. Let's get back to.
I'm gonna take a sip of bubbly. No, literally, I'm drinking bubbly seltzer. So I'll take a sip of my bubbly. I'll say what's top of mind for me is my shirt I got on my Brave Space Live t-shirt. So you can get your merch if you go to our website. Exactly. If you go to our website at bravespacelive.com, you'll see that there is a store attached. It's right in the upper right hand corner. I checked it out. And you'll see some products on there. We'll keep adding products. If you have some product ideas, we'll take those, and I'll talk about that in a second. But we got our Brave Space merch, so you can buy some merch, support us. If you do it, do hashtag Brave Space Live, tag us. We'll post you to our social media. We want to see Brave Space in the wild. We just got a picture of one of our former producers, Benjamin. He was at the farmer's market with his Brave Space or he was out in the world. I think he was going to a farmer's market with his Brave Space tote bag. I'm wearing my crop. It's a crop shirt, and it's very comfortable. The stitching is a little bit off, but we're going to do printing and not as much stitching.
I bet you could iron it.
Yeah.
Wonder if you could.
I probably could, but I don't even own an iron, so there's that. Actually, I got rid of ironing. It's like if I can't dry it, if it's too wrinkled, I wasn't supposed to wear it anyway. or hang it in the shower near when I'm hang it in the bathroom and taking a shower.
It's just way too much work.
I love this shirt. It's actually really, really comfortable, really breathable. I've worn it outside. I've worn it. It's versatile. I feel like I sound like a content creator. It's very versatile. I've worn it to the gym, and I wore it out to eat. And
there you go.
Not the same day, but I did wear it. We have t-shirts, sweatshirts. We know it's getting warm right now, so you don't have to wear your sweatshirts.
I have a sweatshirt, and I wanted to wear it, but it's literally 85 degrees and stinky in my office, and I was like, I can't do it. But we do have a special announcement. So we were going to keep adding new merch to our store so you could get your Brave Space merch. But also, we want to announce something very fun and special. These are our maniacal, supervillain hands. We have decided that we are going to take suggestions for t-shirt ideas. So if you have an awesome t-shirt idea that you want turned into an actual shirt that people can order, send it to us. So I'm actually a graphic designer in my other life, my work life, and we will make a nicely designed shirt. If you send us a good idea and we like it, we will make the shirt and we will put it up for sale, and you can buy it, and all your friends can buy it and support our show. And you
can have your own shirt.
You can have your own shirt. You can have your own. If you're super clever, you can have a whole freaking t-shirt line. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But we are really excited about this. I know we want to put I think you had an idea. This is not Tyshell's idea. There's been some other ones, but doing this. But Too Tired to Code Switch, we might have a Too Tired to Code Switch. Obviously, I don't have as much context for understanding what that means as Tyshell does. But so anyway, so if you've got a good idea for your shirt, email us at hi@bravespacelive.com, hi@bravespacelive.com, or you can contact us on any social media account, and we possibly may turn your shirt into reality.
Exactly. I love it. So give us some shirt ideas, buy some merch, let other people know that you're brave, you're doing Brave Space. So we have some things there now, and you'll see us wearing our merch, because I had the t-shirt on in one of I did one of those voiceovers where she goes, "This is my outfit for today, and if you don't like it, you could leave." Very adorable TikTok grandma, and it was so fun to do, and I love that shirt because it's very breathable. So that's what's top of mind for me. I'm very excited about connecting our store.
There was a mosquito, and I got it in my hand, and then I opened it. I thought I squished it, and it flew away. Oh, I'm sorry.
This tricked you.
I promise I'm paying attention.
He was like, gotcha. So I love that. And then we have I just want to talk just a minute, not about every single episode, but like just some of the topics that we're gonna cover this season.
Yeah.
And we have some really good TikTok friends. Like I get to be mutuals with some of the people I follow on TikTok because I asked them to come on the podcast and they said yes. So we'll be talking about Indigenous rights. We'll be talking about parenting, conscious and positive parenting with some of our friends from TikTok. We'll be and the history of like Black parenting and discipline and things like that. We'll be talking about Black and queer joy. We'll be we have
decolonizing religion, capitalism and white male rage. We got so many good topics lined up this season. I'm so excited about it.
So that comes to another one. If there's something that you want us to talk about, let us know. You can reach us on our socials or hi@bravespacelive.com. And you can also send us any questions. We like Mel said, she has a master's of divinity, so she has a lot of theological background understanding, and I clinical, and then because I was going to be a therapist, psychological safety and DEI we would love to talk about, and anti-oppression and really communal healing. So if it's about making friends in a new place and wondering if they are voting in a different way than your moral compass, write us in, tell us your stories, talk to us. We really, really love your participation. We're going to start saying intellectually liberated equals woke. You're going to see that. Josh, so thank you for that. We'll make sure we shout you out because God, give credit where credit is due. But I'm just so happy to be back for season 3. Yeah. We put a lot of work into this, y'all, and we love it so much. And we love when you all participate with us. I'm sure for the folks who are not watching us right now, but who are listening as they walk, like I listen to my podcast when I walk my dog. We love to be
you're a dinkwad.
All right. That sounds like a fucking
sounds really wrong. It does.
It does. So me and my dinkwad self, hashtag dinkwad life. Oh man,
I hate it.
I love to listen to podcasts. I listen to so many, and having other podcast hosts, TikTok folks come on and share in this space with us, and especially you, the audience. So thank you for accepting a season 3, and hopefully we can keep going with this. Mel, I'll let those will be my last words. Mel, what are yours?
My last words are stay away from dead wild turkeys. No, that's gross. Why did I say that? Why did I do it? I don't know. I'm in a weird mood.
Go call your game warden if something happens to the turkeys in your
area. The game warden. Yeah. No, hey, to support the show, it's really helpful if you're watching this on YouTube or whatever, if you can actually go subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. We would super appreciate it. We're trying to boost our listenership always. And if you have ideas to make the show better, we are all ears. So thank you for listening.
What do the people say? Like, comment, and subscribe.
Follow along while I rebuild this 20th century barn.
You made it weird.
I know. Is it because I'm wearing plaid? I don't know. It just
talking about dead turkeys and barns. Yeah, I think it's
because what's happening. What's happening to me?
We have to go because Mel needs a moment. But we're so happy to be back for season 3, and we're so happy you're back with us. So
we'll see y'all next time.
See you next time.
Bye,
y'all.
Oh wait, how do I do this? Outro. Where is it? There it is.